All right, we're here today with Jim Fernandez from ACPLM, which is Asphalt and Concrete Parking Lot Maintenance. Jim, if I could you kind of give us a background? You're one of our preferred providers here with Associated Gulf Coast. What does ACPLM do, for lack of a better phrase? How would you describe it to the manager and certainly to the board of directors?
Okay, no problem. And first off, thank you, Paul, for having me today, and I really appreciate this opportunity. Our name just says exactly what we do. We're an asphalt and concrete parking lot maintenance company. Pretty much anything that has to do with asphalt and concrete, sidewalks, curbs, parking lots, roads, and their maintenance, we'll take care of it.
So when you say asphalt to me is your parking lot, but we're not just asphalt. When you're talking concrete, you're also talking sidewalks. You're also talking decks around pools. Is that fair? Am I understanding that right? It's not just a parking lot. You are correct.
It's the sidewalk that's typically that does not go around pools. Usually it's going to be in your front yard, the sidewalk that leads up to your door, the sidewalk that runs through your neighborhood, the sidewalk that's getting completely ruined oftentimes by the big, beautiful oaks and pines we have here in Florida.
So you're talking about, and it's an obvious issue that happens in a lot of our more established communities, you're talking about the concrete heaving when roots from nearby trees have grown to the size where now they start pushing concrete up. In the big picture, that's obviously something ACPLM does, but just for the 5,000-foot view, how much work does it take to really deal with that kind of an issue? If you have a large-scale tree next to a sidewalk that's now heaving, what is it that the manager needs to look at, and certainly what you need to look at in terms of, hey, this is an issue? So could you describe that for me?
Sure. Typically what we're looking for when we're looking at sidewalks, and by the way, this can also happen in the gutter that runs along the side of the road or the curb that runs along the side of the road also. But especially with sidewalk, what you're looking for is a 1/4 inch or larger rise in the sidewalk that can cause trip hazards. The number one thing you want to do is try to avoid any injuries in your neighborhoods or your parking lots. So what it usually involves is, if it's minor, it's a 1/4 inch or a 1/2 inch or less, even sometimes an inch. We can grind those down to a smooth finish, try to make it so it's a nice transition. But once it gets a little larger than that, it's probably best to go ahead and remove the concrete sidewalk, saw cut and remove those roots that are underneath there, and start fresh with a new slab of concrete right there. The roots issue will never go away, but it will solve the problem for many years to come.
Excellent. Now I'm looking at, obviously on the slide, we've got trust, integrity, and commitment from the company. What do you consider from an ACPLM perspective? What's the foundation, if you will, of the company?
Well, sure. We wanted to make sure that we established a good relationship with our customers. We wanted to make sure that you could trust what we're saying is what needs to be done, and what we say needs to be done gets done. And that, of course, goes right into integrity. Plus, we wanted you to know that we're committed to you. Oftentimes when you're working outside, not to mention human problems, mechanical problems, and Mother Nature, things go wrong. Well, we have a commitment to finish that job, and when something does go wrong, we're coming back and we're fixing that also. So trust, integrity, and commitment is truly what we believe ourselves to be performing for you, other than just the maintenance.
Perfect. Now, Jim, something that comes up, what I believe a lot when it comes to the manager, and certainly from the board, is they look at these projects, and I'm going to use pavement obviously as the example, but this could be a roofing project, this could be a painting project, but specifically when it comes to the pavement issues that are on every property, doesn't really matter where. But managers tend to look at, and certainly boards tend to look at these projects as these giant, not only expensive, of course, but these giant projects with many, many variables and many, many moving parts. So could you speak to a little bit as to, from ACPLM's perspective, how are you going to make the manager and the board, how are you going to make their life easier when this project is kind of underway? But I want to start with, even before any contracts are awarded, when should managers and board members begin that dialogue of pavement issues?
Well, as soon as possible. The earlier that you're in there addressing issues in your parking lot, the more cost effective you're going to be. The longer you wait or defer, the more expensive it's going to be. Well, the number one thing is to have somebody come out and take a look at that parking lot. And this is a free service. So we'll go out and we'll evaluate, we'll put it on paper, and it's going to be a scope of work that's detailed and easy to understand. Another thing that we like to offer is we'll go to your board meetings. We'll talk about our proposal. We'll answer your questions, your concerns that you have with doing the work. Number one thing is always communication. The more communication I'm having between the board and the manager and us, the smoother it goes. So number one, get out there and let's get out and take a look at the parking lot and make sure we know what's going on. Number two, let's get a scope of work that's easy to understand. Number three, if you have any questions, let's answer it. Number four, once this job gets going, communication is paramount.
Is there something that, from the manager's perspective, they look at these, obviously communication is critical. The manager looks at these projects as, holy smokes, this is going to be a mountain of work, right? And from the ACPLM viewpoint, do you have any model or method in terms of that communication, which is so critical? How do you communicate to the manager and by extension the board? Because what's happening, what we find, is that unit owners want to know what's going on, and the board wants to know what's going on. So we, as the manager, become that middleman for information. So how is it that you go about that communication? Because it is so critical. How do you go about communicating with the boards and unit owners, and certainly the manager at that point?
All right, excellent question. So one thing we do is we provide a written schedule for you. But what goes along with that written schedule will be a map, if you will, a site plan of your property showing where the crews are going to be on each of those days. So it becomes more an issue of knowing when we're going to be there and where we're going to be on each day. So trying to take the guesswork out of it and make it as simple as possible.
Now, there's a component to pavement issues, certainly when you're dealing with streets and naturally with parking lots, is traffic control. What is it that you guys do when you're dealing with traffic control that can make, I'm going to use the phrase make or break a project from the perspective of a unit owner? Obviously, you know, traffic control isn't going to kill the project from your perspective because these projects do take time. But what is it that, from a traffic control perspective, how do you make that easier, I guess, is the easiest way to explain that.
Well, I'm going to drop back to communication again. So knowing where we're going to be and on which day we're going to be there is, again, critical. With traffic control, there's different methods we're going to use for different types of jobs. So if it's a large condo association with many parking stalls and parking lots, and depending on the type of work we're doing, as opposed to maybe seal coating versus paving, we are going to block off a section, and that's what's critical, is knowing when we're going to block off that section so you know where you can be and when you can be there. But really for us, it's like any construction job. Once we secure a work area, it's just safer for the residents, it's safer for the crews that nobody's going in and out of those areas for the duration of that work in that area. And as a rule of thumb, it's anywhere from 24 to maybe 72 hours, the longest, that there's no access to that section of the parking lot.
Understood. Now, the slide that's up on the screen is what you don't know about your pavement may be costing you money. Now we're talking about the maintenance. We're not talking about big giant potholes or crumbling infrastructure, whatever it might be. But from the 5,000-foot view, how often should the the pavement and the asphalt, how often should that be evaluated? Naturally, our managers are on site weekly, or they might actually be on site every day, or they might be there weekly or monthly. But how often really should a professional entity like yourself be out on site actually doing an evaluation?
Well, that's going to depend on the condition, the age of the parking lot. But let's just say this is a new parking lot. It's going to start showing signs of required maintenance within 2 to 3 years, typically, depending on the structure, the design of the parking lot and the roads. So as early as 2 to 3 years you want to get in there. Let's just say you just completed a major project. The same thing will apply. The sooner you are identifying any problems, the more cost effective it is to fix it.
So it is that perspective of, if you spend a couple $10,000 maintaining, it's going to extend the shelf life of that asphalt, so you're not spending $500,000 in a couple of years. You might be able to buy yourself 3, 4, 5 more years by doing a resurfacing, by doing a grind out of just an inch or something to that effect. Is that a fair statement? You could, if you maintain it, you're going to extend the life. Is that fair?
That is a very fair statement. And you know, there's the other good thing about that is that, you know, you reduce liability when you're looking for any cracks in the pavement and or raised areas of sidewalks. Same with curb on the side of the road, and the same thing with potholes in your parking lot. The sooner you're on those, the quicker you fix them, the more cost effective it's going to be, and the less chance of any liability.
So Jim, is there anything in particular that you might be able to point to and go, boy, I constantly see this issue, whether it's an HOA or a condominium, but I constantly see this issue. What is that issue? If you could fill in the blank. We see this all the time. We see blank all the time out on site. What is that blank that the managers and the boards can be heightened awareness, if you will, for?
Well, I would say one of the number one things in our industry that we wish that more, I would say, customers were doing is sealing. And the reason being, when you have a brand new parking lot or a brand new road, that's a big investment, whether or not you just milled and paved or it's a new property. And the sooner you get on there and you seal, the longer your parking lot, your asphalt is going to last. So what I see people do, the biggest mistake I see people do is like, oh, it's brand new. Let's wait 5 or 6 years before we do anything. And sealer actually adheres better to new asphalt, and it actually preserves the asphalt in the condition it's in. So it's wise. The number one thing I would say, and what we do here at ACPLM, is when we actually provide a paving proposal, we have an option to go in there and seal it 1 or 2 years after. But as a bonus to that, we also extend the warranty out 2 more years if they do that. So the number one thing I would say is that people just wait too long to do maintenance to their parking lot or their asphalt.
And maintenance is ongoing. This is not something that once the road goes in, that we don't have to do anything for 5, 7, 10 years. This is something that even if it's a brand new roof or road, as I'm hearing you properly, this is something that you need to be looking at on a semi-annual and annualized basis, so that you're heading off the issues earlier, little cracks, little peeling, whatever it is you want to say, that is only going to save the association's money in the long haul if you're doing subtle maintenance issues, some sealing, those types of things, versus a full-on, you wait 10 years and then you got to basically blow something up. Is that fair?
That is fair. And if you're doing regular maintenance, you'll double the lifetime of your sidewalk, your curbs, your asphalt. And not to mention aesthetically how much nicer a parking lot looks that's well kept and well maintained.
Well, I got to tell you, Jim, you've given a lot of information, not only to myself, but to the managers who are going to be watching this, and certainly the board members that hear this. I can see already in my head some of our managers and some of our board members saying, okay, how do I get in touch with you? So Jim, what's the best, easiest, or most convenient method to reach out to you? As you're talking about this, I'm going to pull the slide up a little bit with some information, but what's the safest and cleanest or most convenient way for our managers to reach out to you directly?
Well, probably the easiest and most convenient way for most people is just to simply call into our office. That number is 813-633-0548. And we always have a person answering the phone. They'll take down your information, and an estimator will get back with you within 24 hours to go ahead and set up an appointment for whatever your needs are.
Outstanding. So to wrap this up, the takeaways are concrete and asphalt. We should be looking at this at the very minimum on an annualized basis. As we evaluate our properties, we should get your company involved sooner rather than later. And if and or when that project actually starts moving, companies like ACPLM will be able to manage the association project and do that ever so critical piece of communication to not only the manager but to the board. Jim, truly want to thank you again for your time. If there's anything we can do from the Associate Gulf Coast side, please don't hesitate to ask, and we wish you much continued success in the future.
Thank you, Paul. It's been a real pleasure talking to you.
Thanks again.